morning, everyone. Wonderful to be together as a church again. This has certainly been a tremendous week for the Force family as we saw our oldest daughter, Michaela, get baptized on Wednesday. Obviously, a super special moment for us and for her that she is now not only my daughter, but even in a weird way for me, still need to get used to that. My sister in Christ, as she asked me the other day, the evening of her baptism, "Hey, bro, do you want to watch something with me?" But obviously just super grateful for everyone that has helped in her life, and we know that it's only the beginning, and obviously super grateful for how God has worked, and has been just very encouraging to see a miracle take place before our eyes. So to my daughter, welcome on board. Wonderful to have you as part of God's church family. This morning we are continuing our series of conversations on race, culture, and the church. And it's been eye-opening to me on so many levels. Our theme scripture for it is in Proverbs chapter 20, verse 5, where the author says, "The purposes of a man's heart are deep waters, but a man of understanding draws them out." In other words, what I want to say here to us as a church, whether you are white, black, or colored, is seek to understand, seek to understand, seek to understand. The question we need to ask ourselves is, in these conversations, can I place myself in the other person's shoes? Now, I have often made that mistake by thinking, well, what I do is I take who I am and I place myself in that person's shoes, and I think, okay, well, with who I am in their shoes, I would actually handle, on my mind, this quite well. Okay, but that's not placing myself in their shoes. To place yourself in someone else's shoes means that you become them. In other words, I go, and if I ask myself, if I was in that situation, I had that upbringing, I had that temperament, that personality, those circumstances, those experiences, how would that have affected me, and what would I do? Okay, I have to be able to place myself in the other person's shoes. And often when we do, we realize, wait a minute, but if I was there, this is what I would do, or this is what I would experience. So where does that come from? From understanding. I want to encourage us to try and hear one another. What has been encouraging for me is how many people have been hearing. So many people have been saying to me in conversation, "Sure, I did not know. I didn't know that's how this particular race feels. I did not know that this is how I come across. I did not know this whole idea of structural racism and how it's affecting people. I didn't know how it is that I'm making people feel. I didn't see my heart, what it was like until now. And now that I see it, I want to repent, and I want everyone to be welcome in my life, and I want everyone to feel at home when they're with me." For those of us maybe that are still struggling to get our head around us, you have to ask yourself, why is it? Do I have a particular bias that I just can't get past? Or is there maybe pride in my heart that just simply won't let go? I'll go back to the same passage as we looked at last week in James chapter 4, verse 6, where it says, "God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble." He opposes the proud. When we're proud, He will oppose us in everything that we do. But He gives grace to the humble. The word grace there in Greek is charis, which translated to English is favor. Okay, He gives favor to the humble. When we seek to understand, when we seek to embrace people, when we seek to understand where they're coming from and where they're feeling and what their life is like, God not only blesses us spiritually with that, but He blesses us relationally as our eyes open to new worlds that we've not been able to see before. I remember when I was about 21 years old, and I can't remember if I've shared this before with the church, but when I was about 21 years old, a sister approached me, one of the disciples approached me, a colored sister, asking if I would do the funeral of her uncle. Her uncle didn't belong to a church. He unfortunately, I think, lived on the street. I can't quite remember the detail. But I said, sure, by all means, I will do it. And that was, up to that time, you have to understand, I've never been to a colored funeral or a black funeral before. This would be my very first. And I remember meeting her aunt to ask her if we could help with this. And as I was preparing for the message, I asked her, okay, so what can you tell me about, I can't remember his name right now, but let's just say John. What can you tell me about John? What are some good things that you would like me to share? And she just simply said, you know what? There is nothing good about John. There was just nothing ever good about him. We just want him buried. Okay. I was 21 years old when I had to navigate this. My first colored funeral. So I go to the house where the funeral starts. Now for white people, if you've ever been to a white actual funeral, I'm not talking about the memorial service, but going to the graveyard, everything is squeaky clean in terms of that everyone is a couple of people walk almost in line, everything is squared off. The coffin goes, as brought by the pallbearers, they put the coffin down, it goes down, the minister says a prayer, and everybody walks away. That's it. End of it. Okay, here I go. I'm in this home, and for the first time in my life, there is a man in a coffin with the lid off, and he is on the kitchen table. I have never in my life experienced or seen something like that. It was new for me in so many ways. Okay, then I did my funeral message. We went to the cemetery, and at the cemetery, they now wanted me, the family wanted me to walk in front of the hearse. I have to remember 21 years old, so as I look back at this, I mean, I was stressing like you can't imagine. So I'm walking in front of the hearse, and then the people behind. We go obviously to the site where the coffin was going to go down, and this is a complete different scene for me. Okay, so what happens is I again say my prayer, they lower the coffin, I'm thinking, man, I'm out of here, amen, thank you, goodbye. And then suddenly I see people starting to grab spades, and now they're closing the grave. I'm like, what is happening here? And everyone's grabbing a spade. Now, if you're colored or if you're black, this is completely normal for you. Believe me, a white person has never seen a funeral like that at a white funeral. Okay, but I was just like, man, this was next level for me in so many ways. This is now, 26 years ago. Obviously today I've been to plenty of colored black funerals, and these things have become normal. But or normal for me, or it's what I expect. Or when I actually go to a white funeral, I'm like, hey guys, why don't we grab the spade and close up the gravesite? But what it did is it opened up a lens for me again, where I can look at the world through someone else's lens and have a better understanding, possibly in some small way, of what it is that they are going through and what it is that they're experiencing. And when someone says that I'm having a funeral, that this is where they're going to, and this is the experiences that they have around it. And my hope and prayer is that in these conversations, and the conversation that I'm going to have with Alistair again today, that we will gain, as a congregation, a better understanding of the colored world. And as Alistair, I think, often said last week and says again in this week, it's his perspective. Doesn't represent the colored people of Cape Town or South Africa. But I do think in conversations that him and I have had together that a lot of people resonate with it. And that's my hope, is that we will gain understanding, that we will seek to humble ourselves, and in the process we will be better for it. As a church, we'll be in God's favor, we'll be in favor relationally, we'll make new friendships, we'll bond like we've never bonded before. So this time, let's watch my conversation with Alistair Kluter. Alistair, once again, great to see you. Last week, thank you. Last week we basically almost only spoke on your experience of racism outside of the church, as a colored man, as a colored bro, and today, colored bra, brasa van die Kaap. And today we're going to talk about sort of experiences that you've had, or that you know that other brothers or sisters have had inside of the church with regards to racism or prejudice. I know that it's much more nuanced, it seems. I think it will also come out in our conversation when it comes to the colored community. But yeah, have you either experienced it, seen it, or know of others? And I know you and I have been in several meetings together with different people, so we have an idea.
Yeah, look, I think I need to also start again. I think I mentioned this last week as well. It's very difficult to say that I've seen racism emphatically. So it's ambiguous. But I think, again, a lot of the feelings of racism that I may see in the church is probably more based on, as a colored person, my insecurities. And we spoke about that last week, where, where I feel like I have to be somebody I'm not. I have to puff myself up and build myself up to have conversations and stuff like that. So so I don't know. To me, what could be seen as racism inside the church is just general conversations. So after the service, we get together and we chat. And again, the general feel is, people are. As people, we try to sort of stick with the people we know, so we become very cliquey and stuff like that. So for a colored brother, I struggle with this quite often, is to actually go into a conversation with some white brothers and feel comfortable there. So, I mean, I know one of our chats, in fact, with one of the other brothers, he had an example. He said on one occasion he saw some white brothers chatting, or in fact, he chatted to a white brother. He had a conversation with a white brother, and they had a good conversation. It seemed like they were gelling. And then a white brother came to join the conversation. I don't know if you remember him saying that. And then this white brother came to join the conversation, and he thought, okay, it's cool, the three of us will chat. But what actually happened was the two white brothers started chatting, and they almost excluded him from the conversation, to the point where he actually very sadly had to walk away. And that, again, that's difficult. So yeah, I think to the white brothers, just be careful, because we obviously want to have conversation, and we have the insecurity. So yeah, that's the one thing I can think of.
So
in terms of in the church.
Before we go on to the next one, you're welcome to circle back, because obviously I was part of that conversation as well. What I can remember are two types of scenarios that came up repeatedly. One was, okay, so colored brother is chatting to white brother. Another white brother comes, hijacks the conversation, basically, and takes the white brother away. Okay, so in other words, and actually takes him away. So without, as far as I can remember, and I think this was more than one incident, without even ever acknowledging the colored brother standing there. That's how I remember it. So in other words, someone comes in, starts chatting to white dude, ignores colored brother, takes white dude, leaves. Okay. That was the one thing that I remember. And then the other one with group conversations was that, like I said, I have a couple of white guys, unfortunately, mostly, and these things that I've been a part of are Afrikaans speaking. Obviously, colored community can also speak Afrikaans, but I think possibly white Afrikaans brothers have got a further way to go. So they're standing in a circle, you are wanting to join the conversation, but it's very hard to join. So in other words, you are there in the circle, but either the conversation never turns to you, you're not included in the conversation, you're not asked about the topic, or the topic is not relevant, meaning that it's a topic that you're not knowledgeable in. And then how it feels as, again, invisible, not interested in, and excluded.
Exactly, exactly what we spoke about last week, so it's difficult. I mean, it's again, I have to go back to the fact that it could be just insecurities and us having to pull courage. The other example I also think came from our conversation was the one with regards to authority. And I mentioned last week that obviously I was a sales manager at a big corporate company, and I had white people reporting to me. So there's a bit of a struggle. And I know one of the brothers said it seems like he has the same problem. Again, this is just his opinion, but he might have had the same thing inside the church, where he's a family group leader or a coordinator of sorts, and speaking to someone that's white, it seems like they take a lot of strain. I don't know, again, ambiguous. Maybe it's his own insecurities, maybe it is racism, but that's also a difficult thing for a colored person and for the black person, in fact. Is again inside the church as well. So you've got it outside the church, you've got that same problem inside the church. So that's something else that we also need to think about and maybe chat about.
What I can remember from that, again, was two sides to that thing. One was which was surprising to hear for me, and again, surprising. I'm sorry that I heard it. Not sorry that I heard it. Sorry that it's happening. That's what I mean. Is and it's a little bit of two sides of the same coin. Is assumed leadership. So there would be that white brothers can often leave the feel of assumed leadership. So we're in a group. Let's say we're a group of ushers. Let's say the head usher is not there. Then the one that would assume leadership seems to be mostly a white person. So in other words, they would just assume I'm now the appointed leader since the other leader is maybe not there. Okay, because I think that also came up a couple of times, and it might be in a church setting like that, it might be in a social setting, but it seems like white people can easily, intentionally or unintentionally, view themselves as the leader, and then because of that, maybe another reason, don't respond well to colored leadership, so that there seems to be a resistance or just not a welcoming or a respect of a role that someone is playing, which seems obviously.
Sorry, Gunnar,
No, go for it. Yeah, yes, yeah. No,
and it's easy. It's easier as a colored person to abscond that responsibility, because we were raised to see the white as superior, so they should have a better ability and better skills and better talent to be able to do this take this responsibility. So most coloreds, even myself, I'd rather shun away and then rather let that particular person deal with it, even if I do have the skills and the ability. And when I do get given the responsibility of leading a particular team, and again, that insecurity doesn't go away. So speaking to a white person, it's like, okay, if you feel that way, and if they don't agree, it's like it's just the way that we were, going back to that systemic racism, where it's okay, all right, whatever you say, you obviously know better than I do. Sometimes it's conscious, and sometimes it's subconscious.
Well, let me ask you this. How easy is it? Now, remember, I'm white. How easy is it to build, for a colored disciple, to build a friendship with a white disciple?
I can only speak on my own behalf here. I mean, I think I mentioned this last week. I was very fortunate not to be a part of the actual struggle. And the minute I got out there and I was at Tech and I met white people, I felt like I was one of them. So it wasn't a big struggle for me in particular, but I know that for many colored people it is. It is because you've got to make yourself more than what you really are, because that's how we were taught. They are more superior, they're financially better off, they have better jobs, they speak better, they've got a better education. So suddenly you have to speak better, sound like you got a better education. So it's difficult. I mean, I can imagine it being very, very difficult for a lot of colored people to actually build a friendship, start a conversation, let alone build a friendship. Inside the church, obviously it's a lot easier.
But is it easy inside of the church? In other words, do you find it a lot easier? Do you find it that people are completely open to it? Because I remember a brother sharing with us that as he's tried to reach across the line and reach out to different cultures, colored brother trying to reach out to white brothers, he often found himself sort of at dead man's door, where he would pursue, but not get a response. So have you had any experiences like that? Now that's where I say, remember, I'm white and I'm supposed to be a friend. So this is where you're supposed to say, Van, never like that with you. Always super easy with you. But I know that other people might be struggling, but for you, man, like BFF. So yeah.
No, I haven't. I'll be honest. I haven't had any problems like that. I also, again, I prefer to see it as if they're not able to meet with me, it's more because of their calendars and stuff like that. But I do see where the other brother's coming from in terms of, because I know he mentioned that he didn't just try once or twice. He actually pursued the relationship. And there were talks of, we're going to come around, and it just never happened. But yeah, I personally haven't had any experience with making friendships with white people, especially not you, Batna.
Thank you. So it seems like from our conversation, from group conversation, and I've seen this at church myself over the years, that we tend to gravitate to those we are most comfortable with. Okay, and that from my side, I don't think is isolated to white people, and you often see it at church when we have picnics. You can see it in the fellowship as well, but particularly with picnics. I don't know if you've seen it, but you'll see at a picnic, you usually get, let's say, 4 kinds of groups. One is you'll have a black group. 2, you'll have a colored group. 3, you'll have a white group, and then 4, you'll have the actual mixed group. Okay, so you will have a group or two that breaks the monotony of what is there, and then the others just huddle together because it's easy. It's easy. It's easy to be with people just like ourselves. Now, this is not necessarily only in race. It can be in a sport. The soccer guys hang out, the rugby guys hang out. Now, they can also be split in color because of the particular like of a sport. But it seems like for everyone, but I'm trying to, in the process here, help cultures understand each other, is that if colored people already feel insecure and feel less, that it would just be super helpful if white guys make it easier and step over the line of discomfort in fitting in. And I know for myself, as I have friends of all walks of life, as I have been in all kinds of situations over the last 28 years, I know it can be hard. It can, because I can even feel insecure in settings that are not comfortable for me, and I don't know what to do. Let's say, I know we're talking about colored community, and Themba and I didn't speak about that, and the black community, but I've been to plenty of funerals and prayer evenings and what have you, and I sort of just don't know where I fit in. And then I stand out like a sore thumb again, because I'm usually like the white guy. So I know it's uncomfortable, certainly for myself. I can't say for all white people, but to step over a line of discomfort and say, oh, I feel awkward, and not because of, I'm purely awkward because I'm not used to it. Now, for me, this, like I said, the setting has been more being in the rural, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and no one even speaks English. And it's like, and yet those things have been some of the most special moments of my life, because I feel like, sure, I've been granted the opportunity to be in such special places of you, man, such close-knit situations, and I feel like a bit of an outsider that was allowed in the back door. I would say that is one. Exactly what you're talking about. And I would also say in all of those situations, I've never, well, there was one where I felt unwelcomed, where I was at a prayer evening and I had to say something, and then afterwards a friend or a family member came up and said, yeah, we don't know if that word was from God or if this man is even a man of God. Let me now give you a real man of God and show you how it's really done. But other than that, for real, I actually thought I misheard it, and I was asking other people, did I just hear right? But that was an isolated incident, and the person that said it obviously wasn't a member of the congregation. But other than that, I've always been welcomed.
Yeah, no, I know, but the picnic situations and the conversation situations, and yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of, as we're speaking, I'm thinking also to church meetings and stuff. You know, when we get together, whether it be the small group leaders or family group leader meetings and stuff like that. I think even sharing our opinions in a big forum as well, especially if the forum is made up of predominantly white people, it's also very difficult. Again, back to that insecurities, the lack of education, or the lack of education that we perceive in our minds.
Perceive yourself,
my opinion, it's not really going to make much of a difference, but your guys' opinions, that's right. So it's difficult.
Okay, so let's say, as I asked Themba as well a week or two ago, is you're standing around the braai, or you're standing around a nice biryani with a number of colored brothers, and you guys are saying, sure, I mean, here is something that we wish white people would know, or that we wish black, or let's say white disciples would know, or that we wish black disciples would know. What would that be? Let's start with black, because it seems like we're picking on white a lot. But let's start with black.
Black brothers, the black brothers. You know what? I think, I don't know if you mentioned it on the actual chat with Themba, or you mentioned it to me offline, but you mentioned that Themba said, you know what, he couldn't understand how he thought colored brothers were one of them. We the same fight, same struggles. And again, this is just my opinion, but I don't think so. I think the struggle is very different for us as colored people. I mean, we spoke about it last week as well. I mean, we're first looking to the left, now we're looking to the right, stuck in the middle. We feel insecure, we feel lonely sometimes. So I do think that the struggle is different, and that we are not going through the same challenges that the black people are going through. So if I were to leave something with my black brothers, and I just want to add this in there. I love my black brothers, and in fact, I enjoy joining their conversations much easier than white brothers. But if I had to leave something with them, it would be that we're not black. Our struggles are different. Our challenges coming from racism are different to theirs. And yeah, I think again, 1994 we celebrated together. Blacks, coloreds, we were like celebrating together, because we had that same hope and that same expectation that my black brothers had. But the reality of the situation is the benefits went more their way than our way. So again, we're stuck in the middle. So it's different. We are different, yeah, we got a lot more to relate to when you compare ourselves to our white brothers, but we are different. So that's what I would like to just leave with the black brothers. And again, that's just my personal view.
And then the white guys, what would you love for them to know? Now, here's your opportunity, speaking as a colored representative for the whole of South Africa.
For the whole of South Africa. A lot has changed since '94. Things are a lot better now. And again, I'm talking about outside in society and inside the church. But I'll have to go back to my point when we started this conversation. It's just to make us feel inclusive. And when the conversation is about something that a colored brother can't relate to, it's to bring the conversation down to what we can speak about as well. I'll never forget that there was a particular white brother there is a particular white brother that's very good at doing that. So when I see him in a conversation with other white brothers, I know and this is not beside you, Batman, someone else.
I know. I wanted to check now. Is it me? Is it me?
He's got an amazing. I mean, he's just insightful. So when I step into the conversation, it's no matter what they're talking about. It's hi, Alistair, how are you? Hi, what are you guys talking about? Are we talking about this? How are you? And you can see there's always a sort of a are you okay? Kind of in the conversation, which I don't unfortunately get with a lot of other brothers. So even with conversations as well, you spoke about the picnics and the braais, and I think all of us do this. We walk there and we think, Scout run, okay, so I know that one, know that brother, know that, I feel comfortable around that brother. But I also know in my heart that I have to sort of stay away from being too cliquey. So if I'm going to chat to some white brothers, I'll make sure that either that brother's there or some other brother that make me feel comfortable is there. So my message to the white brothers, and there's a lot of things that I could possibly say, but I think the strongest one for me personally is just to make us feel seen and include us in the conversations, whether it be at church, invite us over, let's build friendships together. And yes, it's going to take a little bit more work to build a friendship with a colored or black brother than it would for a white brother, because you guys are just, you have a lot in common. But I think it's worthwhile. I mean, I see it in our friendship as well. Yeah, so that's my.
So can I put your phone number on the screen currently so that they can start this by reaching out?
Please.
Reaching out to you.
I'm open.
Now something that my experience with this has been in conversations with people that I think colored people might want white people to know. I'm not talking about Christians. Is you would love to have a friendship. In other words, we'd love to get to know people better. I would love to be a part of the crowd, or the seemingly crowd, but it's a little bit hard to get there, and hard either through a combination of insecurity and not being welcomed, but you would love to. So yes. Please open the door. We would love to come in, and we might feel insecure about different things. I know historically I've heard where people feel like, well, I feel insecure about how my home might look versus the other person's home, or what I might drive versus the other person drive. But in your heart of hearts, what you want is would love to have relationships all across the board.
And I think if I think of our friendship as well, I'll never forget. I think it was one night, myself, your wife, and Karen, and us, we spoke, and you actually asked us, so tell us tell us about the colored culture. And
Yeah.
we had, I think, a number of conversations about
Mm.
that. And it was quite interesting. I mean, you picked up some things, we enjoyed sharing it. And I
Yeah.
think that also sort of built the friendship to the point where it's like you said, you acknowledge that we are different
Yeah.
in our culture, and we appreciate that, and we work around that. You know what I mean? So I
Amen.
think that will also be helpful to the white brothers to actually, chat to the colored brothers,
Mm.
find out about them. I mean, there might be some interesting things I've mentioned
Yeah.
over the last couple of weeks that they never knew before. There's a lot more to it. So maybe start a conversation with the colored brothers from the black side and from the white side.
I love the colored culture. Listen, I love
I
African
do too, by
culture.
the way.
I love the colored culture, and I found it incredibly enriching and such a blessing over the years to be a part of so many different environments and learn so many different things that I was simply unaware of before becoming a Christian. And I'm just talking about how people do family, a sense of humor. Obviously, what I almost want to call the colored language, because there's, although you get white Afrikaans people and white colored people, the colored people can speak a dialect that white Afrikaans people won't understand or follow. And obviously,
Yeah.
in our friendship, that has come up a lot of times where you'll say something like, versind, that kind of
It's
thing.
percent.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, versind.
Yeah. So you don't
Those
want to
kind of,
you don't want to use that word, by the way. It's not a. It's not
yes,
a.
no, it's not a good word, but I've learned it from you. So you teach me bad words.
State look.
Okay. Okay. In closing, any advice from your side to colored brothers and sisters as to how they can navigate the issue of race and culture in a God-honoring way? Like I said, there are insecurities, or someone says something silly. I know we spoke about 2 weeks ago with Temba, where someone says, they'll say to a white brother says to a colored sister, I'll never get married to a person of color. So some pretty nasty things can happen. And I also want to make clear, it's not just bad things that happen in the church. I think there's a whole lot of good things that happens in the church that we actually need to at some point speak about as well, because I've heard a lot of good. But what would your advice be to colored brothers and sisters as to what you think would be helpful to them in navigating race and culture in the church in a God-honoring way?
If I can just, before I answer the question, Werner, just quickly say that I mean, I know we've mentioned a lot. I've mentioned a lot of things inside the church. I think a big reason why I'm part of this church is because of inclusivity. I feel like there's a lot of love coming from the white people, brothers, and the black brothers, and that's why I'm here. So I'm obviously touching on this very few times when it seemed like there was racism, but overall, in terms of the church, I think. Again, I feel very comfortable here. And I mean, if the colored brothers didn't feel comfortable here, they wouldn't be a part of this church.
Sure.
But to get back to your question on what I would share with the colored brothers in a godly way, it's again, I mean, you mentioned it and we've spoken about it a lot, is the insecurities. I think a lot of the reason why we feel like we're being treated in a racist manner is because of insecurities. But I also think we need to remember as colored brothers, as disciples, that God's obviously called us to humility. And yeah, I'm speaking specifically about seeking to understand rather than to be understood. So it's like this conversation we're having now is basically seeking to understand. So if you feel offended by somebody, or if they made a comment that could be racist, and it usually could be either or. Again, it's speaking to them in a loving, understanding way to try and understand where they came from. And I know this also came up from our conversation with some of the brothers there, where they actually did confront some white brothers and stuff. Again, with the aim to seek to understand, humbly approaching and having that conversation with them, rather than making assumptions. And as most colored are in the habit of doing it, because we don't like confrontation. I'm speaking generally from a colored perspective. Again, back to that insecurity, we'd much rather just carry it in our hearts and try and live with it, and then smile on our back teeth when we see that brother. It's to actually have that conversation, obviously at the right time, at the right place, and with the right mindset. Again, just to understand where that particular brother or sister that offended you has come from. So to my colored brothers, that's what I would suggest to you. It's just to have those hard
have the
conversations.
conversation.
Mm.
And sometimes they're not even hard conversations because they weren't meant that way, or it could have been a misunderstanding. Because what I can
It's
remember,
usually the
and
case, yeah.
where we asked people when something happened if they went back, a number of those situations they did actually go back, and there was an apology or a misunderstanding or different tone or what have you, but it actually ended well. And resolving it. And I also think in the midst of this, maybe in closing, is that I don't think we should forget what it is that God has given us in the church, okay, and how far we have come compared often to the world around us. And I often hear the comment of people have often said to me that they bring a black friend to church or a colored friend to church, and then they say, well, this is a white church. And I've obviously been trying to figure out why people feel that way. And there are various reasons that we want to work on, because we don't want anyone to feel that it's a white church or this church or that church. I think what was interesting is, I think what many people don't know is when my family members have come out to church over the years, they actually view us as a black or a colored church, okay, and not as a white church, okay, at all. And I think the reason is most of us grew up in scenarios where I grew up in a 100% white church, meaning what didn't have a white feel, it was white. Every single member was white. And if I'm not mistaken, you come from a completely colored church. I think you said there was like once a black guy there or something like that. And then obviously most black brothers and sisters come from a complete black church. So if I come from a complete black or a complete white or a complete colored church and I go into a different scenario, then suddenly I'm not comfortable anymore because everyone's not like me. And I feel like what has been such, again, a blessing to my life over the years is that, yes, we have far ways to go, but also we have come enormously far ways. And I do think we have a wonderful fellowship, and I do think we have a wonderful opportunity. And I think this is such another peeling of the onion, that with the peeling of an onion often comes tears, but it's such a wonderful opportunity for us to grow more and more and understand each other better and better and do garden work together, okay, with all cultures. So, Alistair, appreciate your heart, appreciate you sharing these things. And looking forward to many people inviting you over for lunch and dinner and breakfast and what have you. And maybe you can invite Lisa and I along to all those, and then we can share the goodness.
Sure. I'll post my number out there so everybody can see it and they can contact me. But listen, Vander, from my side again, thanks for giving us the opportunity just to share. Just from our perspective, and opening it up this way on the Zoom for everybody else to see how we feel and what our perspective is.
Once again, I hope that this conversation has been as helpful to you as it has been to me. And I hope that the last 4 weeks, actually, with Themba Kulu and with Alistair today and last week, will open up not only our minds but our conversations as we think and as we talk and as we pray and as we reflect. And I would want to encourage us as a congregation, and I'm not just here speaking to white people. I want to say black, white, colored, Asian, Portuguese, the one Russian that I'm aware of in our fellowship, Marina, if you didn't know who she was, to ask ourselves some questions. Is there another layer of the onion that God would like me to peel when it comes to racism or to prejudice? Ask yourself questions like, who do I spend most of my time with? How many people of other races are often in my life, in my world, and in my home? And I know lockdown is not exactly the best time to reflect on that, but historically, one of the easy ways to do it is to go to your Facebook page and take a look what your Facebook page looks like. Is it a white Facebook page? Is it a black Facebook page? Is it a colored Facebook page? Or do you see in the page people of all races included in your life? If you've noticed some shortcomings, don't feel guilted out. Don't try to defend it, but rather ask yourself, what am I going to do about it? And what would Jesus have me do about it as he desires for me, as everyone else, become a part of his garden community that will expand his image all over the world? What are lines of discomfort that is maybe time for you or for me to cross, where I know this is where I'm comfortable, and right over there is going to be the next step that I need to take to break this discomfort? What are those lines? What are those steps? one of the things that I'm certainly taking away from this conversation, and many like it as a white Christian brother, is that I believe that our colored brothers and sisters are standing in front of the white world, if you may, if I could say that. I'm not even sure if that's an appropriate phrase, but standing at the door of our white world, and they are desiring to come in. They want to be friends. They want to be connected. They want to be brothers and sisters. But for some, there are still tapes playing in their mind historically of saying, you're less, you're less, you're less. We have, as white Christians, the opportunity to, I don't want to say just open a door, break down the door, okay, and make it as easy as possible for other races, particularly the colored community, to come into your life. That when you're having a conversation, maybe a group of white brothers or white sisters, and someone joins, make it easy. Welcome them into the conversation. We are brothers and sisters. We need to break down these barriers. I want to implore you as white Christians, open the door. Let people in. For the black and the colored community, I'm not black, I'm not colored, and I don't know what the different things are that you might have to work through, but I don't think it's only the white Christians that needs to work through things. We need to work through things, and we need to include. Bring other people into your world, and you will be richer for it. You are the one that will be blessed. Yes, I do believe that by doing it, we'll be a blessing to others. But let me tell you my experience. And listen, I have many shortcomings, and I'm not saying that I'm getting this right. But through the last 20, 30 years, the way that my life has been enriched by bringing all kinds of cultures, all different cultures into my world and entering theirs, I cannot tell you how blessed I've been. I remember years ago a very, 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 very sad funeral that I went to just outside of Umtata. But the experience, again, was life-changing as we were in a rural little village and we had the funeral, and I was the only white guy. And other than some of the disciples that were there, we were the only ones that spoke English. And it was, again, such an enriching experience for me to see how the black community do it back then in the rural area, and we're talking about a number of years ago. But how that goes down, for those of you that have not been at that kind of funeral, is that basically the men don't do that much. Okay, the women, they cook, they organize everything, they make things work. Okay, and we're talking about maybe 100, 200 people, there's a tent. The men mostly, unfortunately, sit around. But there I am, Mr. White Guy. All the women are sitting on the floor. Some of the men are sitting on chairs. And then the elders, there were a couple of them, about 6 or 7 of them. There were only, in this whole area, there were only 2 tables with 4 seats at each table. And that's where the elders sit. Okay, now, as I said before, I was super uncomfortable simply because I didn't know where I fit in. I didn't know where to be, what to do, what have you. And then one of the elders just slapped his hand on the table and he said, "You sit here." Okay, and there I was, Mr. Only White Dude, and joining them at the table, including me. What an act of kindness. Okay, include. A small step can go a very far way. And we all do know what it's like to be included, because Jesus included us. And that brings us to the Lord's Supper this morning, where I want to share this passage that we've read before, but I think is so appropriate to our discussion right now. As Paul writes to the church in Ephesus, and he says, "Remember that at a time you were separate from Christ, excluded from citizenship in Israel, and foreigners to the covenants of the promise." He's saying, remember at a time, he's talking to a Gentile group, a non-Jewish group. He says, remember that although you are in Christ now, there is a time that you were separate from Christ. You were excluded from citizenship in Israel, foreigners to the covenants of the promise. You were without hope and without God in the world. But now in Christ Jesus, you who once were far away have been brought near by the blood of Christ. And all of us, I think, in our fellowship locally here in Cape Town, I don't think we have that many Jewish Christians or that came from a Jewish background. Again, I know for 1 or 2. But we are Gentiles. Okay, we were not part of the promises of God. And through Jesus, we were included. Through Jesus, we do not have to be without hope. We do not have to be without God in this world. And I was sharing with my daughter at the baptism on Wednesday that I know often people say that Christianity is so hard and tough and hang in there and what have you. And I'm not saying, I want to be careful in how I communicate this. I think life is hard. Okay, life has its challenges. But Christianity, a relationship with God, is a privilege. It's not a burden. It is a privilege, and it's a privilege that has been made possible for us through Jesus. And we were standing outside of the family. We were not a part of God's world. We were a distorted humanity. Our image was all messed up, if you may. And Jesus died, brought us forgiveness of sins, broke the power of sin over our lives so that the image could be repaired, that we could be a part of His family, that we could call God our Father, that we could call Jesus our brother. And every time that we take the Lord's Supper, that's what we have to remember. We were once not a part of God's people, but now through God's favor and through Jesus and through His crucifixion, His death, His burial and resurrection, you and I get to be a part of the people of God. Right here, right now. And one day when Jesus comes back to renew all things, we get to be a part of that new world that He's already launched in our hearts at this time. With that in mind, let's go to God in prayer for the bread and the fruit of the vine. Our Heavenly Father, we thank You so much that You're the one that reached out to us, Father. You're the one that have seen each of us individually from different walks of life at different times in our lives, at different ages, and You mapped out life for us in a way to give us the best possible shot, Father, to see You and perhaps reach out to You and find You. For although we were separate from Your people, separate from the world to come, through Jesus, You've opened a door for us. You've given us opportunity. You've empowered us to become like Your Son and to be able to be a kind of people that we simply cannot be by ourselves. And I pray this morning as we eat the bread, as we drink the fruit of the vine, that we will remember Jesus, that we will be encouraged in heart and mind and spirit, and that we'll remember as we have been included, that we will include. And as You remember that we are but dust, that we will remember that we are part of humanity that is frail, that will make mistakes, and that will work through those, that will seek to understand, help one another, and be the kind of people that You desire for us to continually be. For we love You, we pray this in Your Son's name. Amen.